Good evening, friends. It's an absolute joy to be with you. For those who don't know me, I think I know mostly everyone, but in case there's someone that is new, my name is Narayan, and I serve here with Ananda in Los Angeles with my wife, Dharmadevi, and she is not feeling so well this evening, but she wanted me to extend her love and blessings to everyone as well. This has been a whole incredible series called The Road Ahead, and tonight's topic is The Road Ahead, the religion of the New Age, self-realization. So I'm going to share a little bit on that topic, and then we'll have time to open it up for questions, and then we'll have time to actually practice the religion of the New Age, which is better said to be the science of spirit and that of meditation. So just like science has a laboratory with test tubes, we have an inner laboratory through our hearts and our minds with meditation. And so this quote of Yogananda's is actually where I wanted to begin tonight. He said, "The time for knowing God has come." It's a very simple statement, but it's fraught with meaning. Because if you recall with Pru's class on the yugas, we are in the advent of a new age, and it is the age of divine energy, or Dwapara Yuga. And we know this. A friend was writing to me about this class and was asking, well, I heard we're going into Kali Yuga. It just seems like we're going into more utter darkness and chaos. And that's what it seems like, because it's Kali Yuga's last gasp, so to speak. Someone described it as like dinosaurs on steroids. Have you ever heard that expression from the Bible? New wine into old wineskins. There's a new energy, right, that is animating the world, and we're seeing that come into, of course, politics, the financial system, community life, and what we're talking about this evening, religion and spirituality. So only represented by Paramhansa Yogananda, but he is very much an avatar for this new age of divine energy. So here he came at this time to share the science of self-realization, how we can all have personal communion with God. So it's important for us to think through why he said these statements, because a master's word truly is binding on the universe. And Yogananda said, not one person crossed his path without a divine purpose. And I would venture to say, not one word was uttered from his mouth without some deeper meaning that we can glean. So I wanted to open this evening with this quote for us to start to meditate on and masticate, if you will. I wanted us to, we already did this, but we'll do it again. Please join me in a group meditation. Of course, this is I love this cartoon, but this is actually on par with our topic. The religion of the New Age is self-realization. Yogananda said, pranayam be thy religion. I know there are some Kriya with us this evening. There's that chant, desire my great enemy. And in that chant, Master says, Yoganandaji says, pranayam be thy religion. And pranayam is misunderstood in the yogic circle even, what to speak of outside of the world of yoga. But many people think of pranayam as just as breathing exercises. Even Kriya Yoga, people can mistake it was just another technique. But really what he was talking about is this cartoon, that pranayam is a state of being. Dana and I were just talking about that when you withdraw the life force. It's a state of control of one's own energy that you can withdraw it from the outward senses. You can bring it into your spine, inward and upward to the point between the eyebrows. Yogananda said elsewhere that the spine and the brain are the altars of God. That's a fascinating statement. Think about that. Your spine and your brain are the altars of God. Where are we going to find God? We're not going to find him with uh, more churchianity, with more outward religion and ritual. We have to go within. I've always loved that statement of St. Augustine. Have you ever heard his saying? He said, "Man can travel hither and yon around the world, looking for treasures and troves, gems. Oh, passes by the greatest treasure of all, his own self." Have you heard that story of God? And he said, "Well, I have to figure out where I can hide myself so that it'll. I want to play a good hide and seek game." I guess that's why he created us. He's essentially, he loves hide and seek because we're seeking outside ourselves, and it's
Yeah.
not until we turn within. It's utterly simple. The complexity, of course, is what we see in the outer world right now. But God is simple.
And
Communion with God is also simple. It doesn't mean it's easy because we have been habituated to move outward through the senses. That's where the yoga science, Kriya Yoga, we'll talk more about this evening, can be tremendously powerful and helpful because it gives us that extra nudge. And at the same time, we can't find God through techniques alone. So it has to be this marriage, this perfect balance of feeling and reason, right? Of using our feeling nature, but directing it upward, divine feeling. And deeper divine feelings are calm. Deeper divine feeling is true love. It's not human love. It is divine love and bliss. These are the deeper feeling natures of God that are within us, that are our birthright. So we'll have a group meditation later with the turtles. And feel free to pipe in if you're having questions or inspirations that you're wanting, or you can type them in the chat box, of course, too. So don't let lose them. It's funny. I thought this was an appropriate. We talked about the time for knowing God has come. Well, I thought of the question we should ask. Well, what time is it? Where the what's going on? Because we look around the world, it is right. We know Houston. We have a problem. We have a serious problem. But we give ourselves, like Puru did in the Yugas class, we give ourselves context. And the and this is just a brief understanding. Of course, you could purchase the book, Puru's book on the Yugas, for much more detail. It's 7 o'clock. You see where I'm circling the present day here? Kali Yuga is the lowest age. Uh, that lowest point there was 500. Is that AD or was that BC? 500 BC, right? Excuse me. No, AD. I can't see it because it's blocking me. It doesn't matter. But the point is that we had descending Kali Yuga, ascending Kali Yuga. Now we're in ascending Dwapara Yuga, but we're just at the beginning. This is a 2,400 year cycle, and we're only what? It started in 1700, so we're 320 years into it, into a 2,400 year cycle. We're very, it's a lower age, and we're at the beginning of Dwapara Yuga. The good news is it's an ascending age, so there's an awakening to these new healing currents of divine energy, and of course that's what we're talking about with the core this evening through this religion of the New Age, which is what Yogananda coined self-realization. What think how much what a pithy phrase that he chose. This one of the hallmarks of Dwapara Yuga is an enlightened self-interest. And more, of course, one of the best-selling books on the New York Times list years ago was "What's in it for me?" Right? That's sort of the mantra, right, of this age is, well, what's in it for me? But shifting that to a higher octave is what is in it for my divine self. And that's why meditation is so important for us, because it's literally a way for us to enlighten ourselves and to get to that true knowing. The time for knowing God has come. What are we really getting to know? This isn't an intellectual knowledge. Self-realization is an intuitive understanding of your own divine being. Swami Sri Yukteswar, many of you know him, Yogananda's guru, used to say something I've always loved. He said that wisdom is best assimilated with the atoms, not the eyes. Right? He meant that you can read all the books you want. We can go to all the YouTube videos, right? There's a lot of YouTube videos. And we can just keep watching them and watching them. But we will not assimilate wisdom until we go. I like to joke that you have a tube in you. You know what that tube is? It's your own spine. It's your own heart. It's your own brain. Literally, that is the tube, is the spinal highway to the infinite. But we have to seek it with our own heart, mind, and soul. So I wanted to refresh us as to what time it is. It's about 7 o'clock here on the Yuga cycle. And let's not forget, too, that these Yuga cycles are a reflection of our inner personal development, that we move from Kali Yuga, an awareness of ourselves as a physical body or form, to Dwapara Yuga, an awareness of ourselves as an energetic body or being, to Treta Yuga, an awareness of ourselves as thought, ultimately to communing with God in his consciousness. So we actually go through this cycle. You could think every time we meditate, we start with the energization exercises and yoga postures to use the body to prime it, and then breathing exercises to help the prana flow more freely. Kriya Yoga, of course, is a technique of pranayama as well. But then when we let go of the techniques, it's then that we move into these higher ages, you could say. You know what Lahiri Mahashai said? This is something for the Kriya Bandhs attending this evening for us to meditate on. He said that part of your Kriya practice is Parvatasana. Parvatasana is this in yoga is a seated mountain pose where the yogi is just perfectly still. If you look at that picture of Lahiri Mahashaya, he's in that state. The calm after effect poise of Kriya is the way he described it. And that poise is communion with God. It's feeling God's presence within you. Remember those divine feelings that we were talking about, of divine love, peace, joy. You begin to realize, I am that. I am love. I am joy. I am peace. I know it sounds kind of silly, but I realized one day I am a kind person. That's who I am. That's my nature. So I wanted to share a little bit about Kali Yuga versus Dwapara Yuga from this perspective. Puru mentioned this. It was interesting for those of you who joined his class that the largest growing religious group, ironically, is not even a religious group. It's people that consider themselves spiritual but not religious, which is all of us in a sense. I mean, I can attest, I grew up in the Roman Catholic Church, and when I was around 15, 16 is when you become confirmed in the church. And I went away with my friends one weekend skiing, and I missed the class in order to be confirmed. And the priest called my mother and said he won't be confirmed. And I couldn't really care in the least. I was a young, uh, proud man. I'm not proud of that fact, but I didn't care in the least because it didn't have any meaning to me. But that spiritual, there's a deeper yearning that people are having for actually finding God within their own being. That's what we started talking about. But to not just talk about it, but to have actual techniques of God communion, to have a way of awakening. And it also, that way of awakening in this ascending age of Dwapara Yuga will be the death of this dependence on dogmatism. It shouldn't say dogma, it's really dogmatism, right? When we, part of religion, it's one of the most conservative parts of our society. And can be a very positive thing, of course, the adherence to truth. But when it becomes the adherence to an outward ritual or form, it's no longer the adherence to truth, right? It's the adherence to that form. So we could think of Kali Yuga like the ice cube, and now things are heating up, and that ice cube is melting into the liquid divine energy of Dwapara Yuga. And I mean, I think I can speak for all of us this evening. We are no longer satisfied with just reading it, right? What the Bible says. We want to know, and we want to know through our own personal direct experience. These are beautiful images of Yogananda. You can see he's in a state of bliss there. And these are some words of Yogananda ji about this great awakening and change that we're all talking about this evening. I love this quote. Many of you probably have heard of Yogananda defining self-realization. Again, he said it's the knowing in all parts of your body, mind, and soul that you are now in the possession of the kingdom of God. That God's omnipresence is your omnipresence. And all you have to do is improve your knowing. That last part to me is so inspiring and so encouraging. All we have to do on the spiritual path is improve our knowing. And that's where the yoga science and Kriya Yoga can help us. It helps us by, again, the sword of pranayama and cutting out all of the Maya that we get ourselves caught up in. So, of course, the question becomes, well, how do we improve our knowing? And I like to quote my grandfather, Phil Maida. We have to use both our hands. And I wrote a blog about this experience I had with my grandfather recently. It was when I was about 10 or 11 years old. My grandfather was a old school Italian, and there were like these urban legends around him. You know, he was first generation Italian American, self-made man, really tough guy. I loved him. He was a great soul. But when one time Dharmadevi and I went back to the East Coast to visit family for the holidays, and my father picked us up, and he said, and we were driving through Philadelphia, and we passed this industrial building, and my dad said to Dharmadevi and me about my grandfather, he said, your grandfather couldn't read or write. And he walked into that building, and he pointed at this industrial building we were passing on this highway, this like massive, behemoth structure. He said he couldn't read or write, but he told him how much pipe they needed within a foot. And so it was this like urban legend that grew up around my grandfather that he could intuitively tell you how much pipe you needed. Anyway, the story with my grandpa, to give you that's a little backdrop, is I was doing a demolition project with him when I was young. And all I had to do was take nails out of the wall for this demolition. And I had a hammer, and I would take nails out. I would put the hammer, I would put the nails into one hand, and I had the hammer in the other hand. And I got to this one nail, and I could not, for the life of me, I couldn't pull it out of the stud. And I sheepishly went over to my grandfather, and I said, "Grandpa, I can't get this nail out of the wood." And he said, "Oh, yeah?" And I knew I was in trouble just from the tone of his voice. And he walked over to the nail, and he said, "That's because you're not using both your hands." And he took both his hands, and he had his own hammer, and he ripped it out of the wall. And I swear to God, I remember seeing that nail like end over end in midair. But I never forgot the lesson. Use both your hands. That's our problem. We're not, and see, that's where Kriya Yoga and the yoga science, it helps us to concentrate our devotion, right? When we love something, when you really love something, you can't go night and day without thinking of it. You can't stop thinking about your beloved. You can't stop thinking about your divine mother, your father, your friend. It's just on your mind. So yoga helps us to get stuck in, so to speak, so that we can use our whole being to concentrate on God, to commune with God. And that's what the the techniques help us to do. And this is another quote from Yogananda from the Autobiography. He was quoting Shankaracharya, that the rituals can't do it. The outward ritual cannot destroy ignorance because they are not mutually contradictory. It's realized knowledge alone that destroys ignorance. And that Kriya Yoga, Yogananda said, was the real fire rite. It's that deeper, it's the inward religion. It's the inward fire ceremony, bringing the energy in the spine up to what? The inner fire at the point between the eyebrows. Master said something so powerful for us. He said that the seeds of past karma cannot germinate when they are burnt in the fires of wisdom. You know, that's why some Kriya yogis, getting back to Lahiri Mahashaya, that he said to hold that calm after effect poise. And if you practice yoga techniques without integrating them, right, without sitting and absorbing and actually meditating, because the real meditation happens in that calm after effect poise. If you don't have that, you may have experienced irritation or restlessness because we've stirred up that karma in the deep spine, and we have to hold it at the point between the eyebrows to allow it to be transmuted in that light of God. So the path of Kriya Yoga, like my grandfather actually, he knew it intuitively. We have to learn to use both our hands. And so this religion of the New Age is very simple. It's using energy, being able to concentrate our energy so that we can ultimately expand our consciousness and have an experience of God's presence. We talked about this quote before of pranayama being our religion, and that we get into a rhythm. For those of you who practice Kriya Yoga, you know that it takes a rhythm with your breath, quite literally. And it brings you into really the deeper rhythm of God. I remember when I first met Swami Kriyananda in New York City, and just seeing him walk without him saying anything, I could feel that he was in some higher rhythm of God, and what he had, I wanted. And it's funny, this is a little bit of an aside, but it's related to pranayama and using our willpower. The very first conversation I had with Swami Kriyananda, he came into New York City and he was going to be giving a program that weekend, and he simply asked me, it was 4 words: "Will you be coming?" That's all he said to me. And he was just asking me, "Will you be coming to the retreat weekend?" Very simple question, but the way he said it and the sweetness of his smile, I said, "Yes, sir, I am coming." But it was very moving for me, because what I realized is he was actually asking. You see, the masters never coerce. They never impose their will on us. It takes 100% of our willingness, our cooperation with the flow of grace, our that remember the heavenly gift that we have of divine love in our hearts. It's free for us to give. And so I realize now, because I've thought about that interaction with Swami, that that's what he was asking. He was asking freely of me, will you be coming? Isn't that what Divine Mother is asking of us at every moment? Will you be coming? Will you, rather than get mired in your own little self-absorbed drama, will you be coming? Will you raise your energy? Will you come and meet me? What did Yogananda do when he came out into the stage? He would say, "How feels everyone?" And they would say, "Awake and ready." Right? He would ask people to raise their energy, but it has to come freely and willingly. And that's part of getting into the rhythm of pranayama being our religion, that it learn that we learn to love it. Because if we don't practice it with love and reverence, then we're huffing and puffing. For those of you that aren't familiar with the techniques of Kriya, what they're really all about is to facilitate. I was thinking, wow, what's the one technique Yogananda said that if he went to a desert island, he would bring that one technique? He said it would be the energization exercises. And he said that through energization and your awareness of the prana and the energy flow, you would discover the other techniques. But all of these techniques are about the awakening of the divine energy within us. Because we need to start where we're at, and that's why it was such a unique contribution to the science of yoga that Yogananda gave with energization. And as we were just talking about willpower, remember, he said that the greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. And will is desire, he said, plus energy directed towards a goal. In other words, when we want God, we want that communion, we want that knowing beyond any doubt, that we begin to generate uh, an energy flow within us, right? And that energy then creates a magnetism. And that magnetism, literally, this is the science of religion. This is the religion of the New Age, that we literally were drawn into that the strongest magnet of all, which is God's love. And I love Yogananda's chants, and there's one that's always been near and dear to my heart. And I think we all need to kind of pull it out of our chanting booklets. It's divine love sorrows. We're going through a lot of pain and suffering right now in the world. I have been roaming, is the way the chant goes. Through endless incarnations, I've called out for thy name. It's this chant of divine yearning and longing. But there's one line that it 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 just strikes me to my heart of hearts. Evermore moving towards thee, thy vast unthrobbing heart. I absolutely love that. God's heart is vast and it's unthrobbing, right? It's our hearts. What did another saying of St. Augustine? He said, "Oh Lord, our hearts are restless, and they will not rest until they find their rest in thee." But the way for us to rest in God is through this science of yoga married with heartfelt devotion. Speaking of, this is a beautiful quote that Swami Kriyananda shared, that feeling in the form of devotion is the prime mover in spiritual development. That's because, and this is important for us to remember, that we part of our consciousness, part of our nature is feeling. And but we want to direct that, we want to offer that ever more moving towards thee. We want to offer our little heart up to the divine heart, our little light up to the divine light. And Nayaswami Devarshi shared these quotes with me for tonight. They were perfect. The great artists get so completely into the mood of their work that what they're doing is not techniques. The techniques are incidental. Their art is an expression of consciousness. So it is with the practice of Kriya. So we need to get into this with our meditation and with the techniques, that we become spiritual artists, right? We're not just spiritual scientists. It's the art and science of yoga, that we get so lost in this practice of Kriya Yoga, of meditation, that we're just in that. I was caught up in ecstasy. One of Swami said in one of his songs, that actually have that as the bhav, or the attitude. See, it's so important, the attitude with which we pick up our practice. And I just wanted to, and we'll open it up here for questions in just a few moments, but this was a quote actually from Swami Kriyananda from The Road Ahead, that, for us now, because it's so easy to feel like, well, what can I do? I'm in my home, I'm quarantined, what good can I really do to the world? Remember, the greatest good that we can do is to be a cause right now, is to not get caught up in the reactive process and the drama of the world. That we are the cultural creatives, if you will, that will usher in this new age. It's a great responsibility, but it's also a great joy. What else would we dedicate our lives for? I think we were born for this time. I think this is what we've been preparing our entire lives for. This moment in time to hold fast. Like Sri Yukteswar used to say, that the man of self-realization, his subtle spiritual vibrations, they affect the whole universe, right? We think, oh, what am I? But I have the universe behind me here, right? And they say that the human body is like that uh, event horizon, that we're midway between the largest planet and the smallest quantum particle. We have no idea how powerful we are. And of course, that it's a divine responsibility that we use our energy and our magnetism for good. And of course, the first and greatest good is to commune with God, and then to try and bring his presence into whatever way that we feel called to serve. Oh, I forgot to take this slide out, but this is appropriate, the cell phone Yama. Lastly, I just wanted to mention, this is more for next week. Kabir is talking about preparing, right? Being prepared for hard times. And Narayani and Shurjo will be talking about ushering your community through chaos. But something Yogananda said about this social pattern of the future, he called it spiritual socialism. Now, socialism can have a bad name right now that, well, we've got communism, and people say, well, socialism is one step away from communism. There's a reason that communism is striking somewhat of a mainstream chord, because of course we want the greatest good for the greatest number of people. But the problem with communism is of course that it actually kills people, and it subverts the individual. It doesn't encourage individual growth. So what Yogananda meant, Swami was digging deeper into this. He felt by that, because that was Yogananda's phrase, spiritual socialism, that he meant the voluntary cooperation of small communities that's not directed by the government. What do we have now, right? The government trying to step in and print more money and help people out. The real solution is going to be world brotherhood. The hope for a better world is the small community solution. And that's what we're all dedicated to. The communion of God within and expressing that joy and harmony in our outer lives. Let me pause there and see if does anyone have any.
That slide, Narayan, that you had about something about true souls, about leaving church. I didn't get a chance to read that whole thing before you.
You are on the eve of a great spiritual awakening, a great change in the churches where true souls will be drawn to seek the actual experience of God's presence. Yeah,
Yeah, that's beautiful.
it is.
I was kind of thought came to me with the last slide with the term spiritual socialism. Of course, I'm very leftist myself, but I don't go into politics so much, except that I know a lot of the small, he talks about the small communities and the small individual communities, the spiritual communities. A lot of that is similar to, I think, the principle of anarchism, about the idea of small collectivism without the central government. And I think the reason communism doesn't really work is because so much of it is, as someone mentioned before, based on the material. There's no real spiritual basis. That was a problem also with, in the 60s, when a lot of hippies were forming these little communes up in the hills and around the areas. A lot of them fell apart because it was all based on just kind of a sensual, spiritual, not spiritual, materialistic sort of attitude, even though they were claimed to be rejecting materialism.
Yeah.
And there was no real spiritual foundation to a lot of it. And that same is true with a lot of the political situations too. It's even true with capitalism.
Yeah, it's interesting. Thanks for sharing those thoughts, Martin. This thought occurred to me the other day about world brotherhood communities, small communities like ours, that they're the antidote for communism and for capitalism, right? Because we've got this, the greed and the consumerism. Vandana Shiva was talking about that, right? That word consume it's like, a taking. It's actually uh, drawing, taking in, taking away. So world brotherhood communities, it's about voluntary cooperation, right? And people working together. And communism doesn't work. It's killed hundreds of millions of people over the last century. I mean, let's just be honest about it. So Swami always said about the Ananda communities that our two principles are: one, people are more important than things, right? You could have the most efficient system, but if you're just trying to cram people, the greatest efficiency is harmony, is having harmony within our lives, within our friendships, within our families, within our communities. So that's why he was, I think, pointing out voluntary cooperation, Martin.
Yeah.
And so it is with, to bring it back to the inward science, we have to voluntarily cooperate with the flow of divine grace. Yoga is really simply about just opening the blind, like the sun of God, the light of divine grace is shining down equally on everyone. I think Jyotish, Nayaswami Jyotish met Ananda Ma. Many of you know Ananda Ma, the great joy permeated mother. Yogananda wrote about her in Autobiography. And Jyotish had these malas and different things that he was going to bring back to Ananda Village. And he asked Ma to bless them. And she said, "Why do you ask this body to bless all of these malas and everything? Can't you see the divine grace that's shining down equally on all of us at all times?" And then she did bless the malas, though, too. But this is the yoga, the purpose of yoga is to help us to cooperate with the flow of divine grace.
Yeah.
What are other thoughts, inspirations, questions that have come up for you?
Me or
I just wanted to know, if possible, where the phrase spiritual socialism can be found in the writings of Yogananda ji.
It's in the book, The Road Ahead, Amar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was pulling different excerpts for tonight's satsang from The Road Ahead, which is an ebook on Crystal Clarity's website. But yeah, that was a point. Swami said he never heard Master elaborate on it. So, Master was yoga. When I say Master, excuse me, I mean Paramhansa Yogananda. He was not for big government. In fact, he talked about how taking handouts from the government, it takes away people's individual initiative, right? And that's what we need. What's going to get us out of this kind of crisis is human ingenuity, creativity, initiative. It's not passivity. It's not sitting back. No, the
Yeah.
whole system is broken. So I mean, I realize, you know, people need to do what they need to do to eat. But the way for us to move forward is brotherhood, and we have to
Absolutely.
find a way to actually manifest that. And that's part of our next evolution with Ananda LA. There's a growing interest in having a community and getting land, and we're taking it very seriously.
Yes, that's so exciting. I'm very excited about that. Wonderful. Thank you.
Did anyone who hasn't had a chance to share yet, please, by all means.
Yeah, I had heard about that, and that you guys were getting ready to start a community up there, kind of similar to what we have here in Portland. I mean, so how far along is that? I mean,
Well, I'm broadcasting you from my car tonight, Chris. So we're not that far. We're not that far along. We do have a piece of land. Some people may not, that are on the broadcast tonight, may not be aware. We have a piece of land out by Joshua Tree, 30-acre parcel in the high desert, and it's got absolutely nothing. It's got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and Dharmadevi and I have another tiny home on there. But that's a starting point. It's 3 hours from LA, so it's not really close enough so that people can still live and work within Los Angeles. So we're starting to look in the 40 to 50-mile radius as well around LA. But we're just in the ideational stage. We're in Treta Yuga. We haven't grounded it at all yet.
It takes so much effort to incarnate here on earth, and yes, it's challenging here, but why not? Why not, if you're going to incarnate, why not go through it all and serve as much as you can and burn through all that karma in a challenging planet, if that makes sense. We here in, I've got Bhakti Ann is listening in, so we're both members of Ananda Australia meditation group, and we only began 3 months ago was our first satsang, and we do weekly Zooms here all across Australia with our devotees, which is really lovely. And the timing of it was just unreal, because we've been wanting to get something started here for such a long time. And then this all started and Zoom came along and Babaji was like, here you go for it. So the timing of it is, I know myself personally, I was very tired. It's been a trying 12 months for me. And when that started, I thought, oh goodness, I don't know if I really have the energy for this, but together collectively, I've just taken off, and it's just proof that we were born for these times, because we can be of service during the middle of a pandemic and connect with each other. So it's been a blessing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Claire. What a blessing.
Yeah.
And
Really.
I feel what you're saying, that it's, and this could be the first innings, right? I mean, everyone just wants things to just snap, go back to the way they were. They're not going back to the way they were.
Never gonna happen.
I think we need to like marshal, because the blessing is we have to dig so deep. Devi said to Swami, I didn't know you had that strength, sir, during the lawsuits with SRF. And Swami said, I didn't know I had the strength either. But faith is my armor. When we're in these intense periods, it calls for us to just dig deeper than we realize we have. And Bhakti, I send blessings. Bhakti and I
Hi.
years ago. How are you?
Narayan. Yes, I'm that same Bhakti. I remember you well.
I remember you, Bhakti.
Oh, nice to see you.
Oh, yay. Thank you. I'm so glad you and Claire what a blessing. I mean, this is, to kickstart, we don't realize, just that initiative of starting another meditation group and bringing people together in this way.
Yes, well, what you might not realize is that we're all in different states. And under Australia, our meditation group is everyone, well, we have a few people in the same states, but we're not together. We might have 1 or 2 people in the same city, but we can't all come and sit down together even without COVID. So it's really a manifestation of Dwapara. It's an energy meditation group, and it's very powerful. It's been very powerful right from the start.
That's awesome to hear. Well, we love that you guys are surrogate Ananda LA members. So.
Thank you.
I guess there's a group down in New Zealand for Ananda, and I heard that they had plans to start some type of community. Is there any?
I have no idea, Chris. Yeah, I know there's a group in New Zealand.
There is a very strong group in New Zealand, and has been, I think, for at least 6 or 7 years now. Kavita heads it. And I have heard that they're very actively looking to establish community, but I don't have more information than that. Claire, do you know any more?
No, Kavita, she's a light bearer, and she has her house, which she runs bed and breakfast from, and does spiritual retreats, and that's where her community gathers. But I haven't heard anything about expanding that at this point in time. But we're having a lot of fun with Australia, New Zealand, and now we've got Singapore and Thailand. So it's like the whole Asia Pacific like is grooving. So it's really great. It's fun.
You're conspiring.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That's what I love about Ananda. Like someone said, well, how do you start an Ananda group? And you just do it.
Yeah, just happen.
Is Jennifer on the call tonight? Jennifer is a beautiful soul that had the inspiration to start a group up in Thousand Oaks, which is about 30 miles north of LA, for those of you who are not in LA. And she started this, we have a beautiful community of souls up in Thousand Oaks area because of like Kavita, like Claire, like Bhakti, because of just one person just had the desire to share with others. It's not everyone's calling to do that, but when it happens, it's a beautiful, Ananda is just one of these communities, but I hope that you all can feel that empowerment, that if you do feel inspired to start a group in your area, know that we have a saying in Ananda LA, by all means. And we're here to support and share that we need to get the light out. Someone joked, it wasn't a joke, they were introducing Jyotish and Devi, and they said, and they are the headlight bearers. And then Jyotish said, oh yeah, we've been putting out the light for 30 years or whatever it was at that time. But, the world needs, remember what Yogananda ji said, Searchlight of Love. If you have Metaphysical Meditations, this little book, or if you have that CD, Swami reading, there's one, it's called The Searchlight of Love. And he says, the world needs your love so that the hearts filled with the darkness of hate can be dispelled by the searchlight of your love. Remember, this is our heavenly gift that God has given us. Let us use it in this new age to usher in higher consciousness. And let's do so together with meditation now. So I invite you to, we'll go through a mini yuga cycle of our own. Let's first start invoking the presence of the great ones and the masters. You can pray in the language of your own heart. I'll offer a prayer. O Divine Mother, Father, friend, beloved, our Lord, our God, our all. O great masters of Kriya Yoga, of self-realization, Jesus Christ, Babaji, Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Yukteswar, Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, we humbly bow before you. We thank you with deep love and gratitude from our hearts. Help us in this meditation to ascend the spiral stairway of wakefulness, to concentrate our minds, to open our hearts, to cooperate with your flow of divine grace, so we may receive thee and share thee with all, to manifest your will and usher in world brotherhood into this world. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let's start by inhaling, tensing the body. Low, medium, high, like energization if you're not familiar. And then you double exhale, you relax and feel. So inhale, tense the body. And then relax again. Inhale. And then and relax and feel. And check your posture. Remember, Yogananda said, the spine and the brain are our altar of God. And he also said that a bent spine is the enemy of self-realization. So we want the spine to be straight and relaxed. Check that you can bring the shoulder blades together slightly, chin parallel to the floor. Lift the gaze to the point between the eyebrows. And let's balance the mind with the even count breath, where we inhale, hold, exhale for the same count. Let's do this all through the nose. So inhaling, hold the breath, and exhale. Inhale, hold, and exhale. Again, inhaling, hold the breath, and exhale. And now let's allow our breath to flow naturally without controlling the breath. Just simply allow it to flow in and out of its own accord. Become aware of the physicality. We're in Kali Yuga right now in our meditation, just the physical aspect of the breath. You might feel your belly moving, your lungs. You may feel the breath in your nostrils. Just simply bring your awareness to the breath, but with a sense of reverence that breath is God in you. Like Christ said, we don't know where the wind comes or where it goes. We don't know where our breath comes from or where it goes. It is the song of spirit within us. So let's tune into it, not just mechanically and physically, but also reverentially. Keep the gaze now uplifted to actually where the breath originates, which is the point between the eyebrows. And let's bring in the technique of concentration, Hong Sa. So with this reverential awareness of your breath, now accompany whenever you inhale the inhalation with the mantra Hong, H-O-N-G. And when you exhale, Sa. You can feel that you're moving through Dwapara Yuga in your meditation, awakening the inner energy through awareness of the breath and the energy in the spine, and that you're lifting it to the point between the eyebrows. Whenever the mind wanders, with calmness, with determination, with the deepest love, bring the awareness back to the breath, lifting the gaze to the mantra. Let's feel that we're moving into Treta Yuga with the mantra, I am spirit. Use willpower combined with feeling to hold your concentration at the point between the eyebrows. Awareness of the breath and the mantra. You might find your breath calming down, maybe a pause after the inhale or exhale. Enjoy any stillness or any pauses between the breath. Now let's release the technique, exhaling gently 3 times in succession through the mouth. Forget the breath, just breathe naturally. And for the final stage of our meditation, let's move into Satya Yuga, communing with God, the age of truth, of oneness with the divine consciousness. Try to hold yourself perfectly still, opening your heart, uplifting literally the body, your energy, your thoughts, and now communing with God's Spirit in whatever expression is cascading over your being. Let's enjoy for a few more moments this calm after effect poise of the techniques of meditation. Where we can truly rest in God. And let's share, bring the hands to the heart, praying for friends, family, co-workers, friends in this world and the world beyond, all those suffering from the pandemic, physically, mentally, emotionally. Let's radiate peace, love, goodwill, harmony, divine friendship to soul friends everywhere. Divine Mother, thou art omnipresent. Thou art in all thy children. Manifest your healing presence in their bodies, minds, and souls. Let's rub the palms together vigorously, acting as conscious, willing, loving channels for Divine Mother's healing energy, holding the palms up, chanting Om 3 times. Om. 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 Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.